Hello, everyone. This is Ed Breniger, and welcome to the Eddie Network podcast. Today, I have my friend John Locke, and John and I have been friends for 20 some odd years, I guess, maybe.
Yeah.
And we used to do leadership work together. And he's a fine man, a fine leader, a coach, and a lot of other things. Oh, and a Toastmasters guy too. He brings a lot to our conversation, a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, and I'm really glad that you're here, John. And it's good to see you, and I appreciate your impact upon me. It gave me a lot of confidence and affirmation, and at times when I needed it. So I thank you for that, and it's been good to see you. So glad you're here. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do now. What's your field of work?
Well, first of all, Ed, thanks for the opportunity to reconnect and relive some of the moments that you and I experienced on our leadership journey. It's exciting to see you step in this world of broadcasting, and I can't wait to see what happens next for you. On the journey that I've been on, this current phase of life is in a role as an executive coach at a top 10 accounting firm, which is called FORVIS. And most of the listeners in the podcast probably won't recognize that name because we are a brand new, newly merged firm between two entities that were in the top 20 about a year ago, called BKD in Missouri and DHG in North Carolina. And we came together to form the 8th largest accounting firm in the U.S. We're a global firm with a few offices overseas, but primarily here in the U.S. with about, I guess we're currently about 1.6 billion in revenues, and somewhere in the neighborhood, upwards of 5,000, almost close to 6,000 people. So I've been privileged to be a part of an executive coaching team here. I had the opportunity to start the coaching practice here at Legacy DHG I guess it's coming up on 9 years ago. And so I work with leaders in the firm, from partners to directors to emerging leaders, to help them on their leadership journey to define themselves, who they want to be as a leader, and to have a rewarding experience along their leadership journey. Because as you and I know, the leadership experience is truly a journey. It's not a destination, and it's not a title.
Yeah.
And so helping people to understand that, engaging with them in areas that are challenging for them to navigate, to help them see what's possible, what's next, is an exciting place for me to spend every day working with some amazing people. So yeah, technically I'm an executive coach at FORVIS.
That's excellent. And and I know we want to protect the company's knowledge, so I'm not asking about the company, but what is it that you have seen as an executive coach in terms of the transition that we have gone through organizationally in the world over the last decade? What's your sense of where we are now as opposed to where we were, say, 10 years ago?
Yeah, well, it's a huge question. And I think you and I are probably reading blogs and seeing articles every day of people who are trying to assess that, and lots of opinions as to what's happened to us in these last 10 years, especially the last four or 5 years. Yeah. I think about how different the world was in 2019 versus what it is today. If I look at this through the lens of leaders, I think leaders have had to make a significant adjustment. Our firm, the Legacy DHG firm, went through 2 major transitions in a very short period of time. We took a firm at that time of 2,000 people who were all working in offices across the U.S. from a Friday working in offices to a Monday, everybody working virtual. Life and work changed dramatically, and it has never really come back from that. And it's much a functional logistics thing as a emotional and mental process that people are, I think, are really still struggling with. And when I look at the leaders that I'm working with, it's this change agility. This is one of the big issues. You know, how do I adjust? How do I get into a new framework? How do I develop people who I can't relate to because they've never worked in an office. They would never think about wanting to work in an office, or I need them to come to an office and they're resisting, but yet they're great talent. I mean, the war on talent, the issues in developing talent are unprecedented right now. I mean, I've never seen such a unique landscape as it relates to people assessing careers. I'm on the phone with people every day that are looking at changing their work. I mean, just giving up an entire career and going and doing something like you and I were talking earlier about somebody just giving up a career and doing a food truck, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, not that that's that dramatic every day, but people are looking for this higher level of purpose and life satisfaction as a result, I think, of being very isolated and totally introspective for an extended period of time, which in a lot of ways was not healthy, but in some ways has caused people to really look at themselves in the future in a healthier manner.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I see that, and I take it as a transition from where we were and where we couldn't stay to where we're going to need to be in the future. And it's you know my material, so it's really going to depend on the individual being willing to take initiative and not
Yeah.
simply respond to what is asked of them to do, but they have to take initiative to create opportunities, create the work, even within working in a corporate environment. They have
Right.
to do more initiating than they've ever done before.
Yeah. And if I had to think about one element of the leadership profile that has come under such, well, probably the most scrutiny, and it's obvious when it's really not well developed, it's this concept of authenticity around communication.
Hmm.
And I would say that I first saw it done well when our former CEO is now the chairman of the board of FORVIS, but he was CEO of DHG. His name is Matt Snow. And Matt had been our leader for a few years going into the pandemic. But when we hit this whole new world, it changed so dramatically. He took a stand around vulnerability, transparency, and authenticity, unlike I had never seen before of a corporate CEO. And we were live streaming every week with him, giving us updates. He was almost in tears sometimes talking about some of the impact it was having on people in the organization. And then it came to that moment where we knew something big was going to happen, and we had a huge furlough. Never in the history of the company had that ever happened. Yet he was there, honest, with integrity, sharing what he hated about it, what he needed to do, what was important for us to do, what we could look forward to in the future, and what the reality was. And not everybody liked the outcome, but everybody appreciated that stance that he took. And no one could deny the fact that he was about as authentic and vulnerable as he could be in that situation. So if I take that as a model and I look at, you know, what's going on now with more of the average leader, I think there's a lot of people struggling with that. I don't think they're doing it as well as they need to be doing it and placing the priority on it that needs to be, because people are looking for authentic leaders like never before. And that includes folks who are willing to be vulnerable, willing to be the ones who are going to take some risks in these relationships and kind of put their neck on the line for what's right and make the extra effort to connect in a way that maybe they have never thought themselves capable previously.
Well, I've been doing this leadership stuff for almost 40 years, and I can tell you that the word authenticity was always just kind of a marketing tool, marketing word, and it really never resonated. People didn't resonate with that because well, for whatever reason, and I don't think the training that people who end up at the top, in the top level, the C-suite of organizations, are not trained for that. They're trained in other specific areas, and they rise into those areas because they're good at this, in particular, this one area. And then they arrive at that place and they realize, oh my gosh, I am really isolated here. I've got to go find people who I can talk to and who will listen to me. And some of them are good at that, and many of them are not. And so I think that's where a lot of bad decisions are being made. They're ill-equipped. They're ill-equipped to be the senior leaders because they're still operating off of a model of organizations that existed for 200 years, and
Right.
it's over.
It is.
So to me, that's exciting. It's not exciting to a lot of people, but it's exciting because it means that new talent is going to emerge in this time, and we will move through this, I think, with not ease. It will be hard. It'll be extraordinarily difficult to go through this, but there will be always a hint of optimism that this is going to lead to someplace good.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely.
So I imagine you have coached many people who find themselves in transition, and they're questioning whether they stay with the company, or they're questioning, all kinds of things about who they are. In my book, Circle of Impact, the first chapter has a story about a man named William who joins a company or joins a corporation out of college, and at 45 he finds that he has to leave the company, and he doesn't realize that the company's values have been embedded in him that he doesn't know who he is. And so he has to go through a time of discovery about the things that really matter to him as a person. So that's the kind of thing I see happening with people who are in transition. So when that person is in that kind of position where they're having to kind of reinvent themselves, what is it that you say to them? How do you guide them through that kind of process of rediscovery and revalidation of who they are?
Right. Well, it's obviously different for everybody because people are at different places as they evaluate, the emotional elements and the factual elements of it. Whether it's they've gone through this restructuring and they've lost their position of prominence and power and responsibility. How are they going to rationalize with themselves that they still have a career when their career seemingly up on the top of the surface is taken away from them? So it can be that, it can be, I'm tired of the hours, working hard. I mean, there's so many different variables that are causing people to question right now. This merger that we've been through has created, quite a lot of case studies, I guess, that you could use for that. And I like to start really with people with just their values. And we talk a lot about your values and your purpose. And even though that doesn't seem like to many initially a relevant topic for, success in a career, to me, it's everything in a career, because if the individual values and their purpose, their greater why are they getting up every morning and doing this, for whom, for what outcome, etc. If they don't have a good handle on that, then you can't really align that with, which is the next step, is here's where the company is and here's the company values. And as we've gone through a rebranding, we've reestablished all of our values, and we have this long acronym called Be Bold, and each of the letters stand for something. And so we talk about, is your vision for your life aligned with, the vision that the organization has for its individuals and its clients, and the way we want to show up in our world of impact with society? I mean, it goes obviously well beyond just a client experience, even though that's critically important. And what I loved about what FORVIS came up with in that is that the very first B in the Be Bold is be your best self.
Yeah.
And I love that, because that's really where it all starts. Are you really being your best self? Are you working to be your best self every day? And if you aren't, what's holding you back? And if you aren't accomplishing some of the things, and you're getting feedback that you're coming from the old school of command and control leadership and autocratic and ways of accomplishing things, and just working people to death, and not much recognition, all those things that are very typical, especially in our industry, of the historical perspective of careers. If that's how you got here, guess what? That's probably not going to be a success formula for you as you develop people in the future, because they're looking at you to emulate themselves 5, 10, 15 years from now and say, do I want to be like this individual? And in most cases, the answer is no. Well, that's scary, because the talent pipeline is already pretty weak. And now we're having people opt out because they don't see themselves from a value proposition in the same values as their leaders.
Yeah.
So we spend a lot of time on values, purpose, and then alignment of that with the organization and the organizational values. And then we look at, okay, what is it going to take for you to feel good about moving forward? Or if there are some non-negotiables here that just don't work, then what is next? What are the options? And let's talk about them. Because my job is and I'm an internal coach, which is kind of an interesting position to be in. My job is not to keep people here, which is somewhat counterintuitive. It's to enable people to make really great decisions about what success looks like for them. And hopefully it's here. But if not, I would rather them walk out the door feeling like they made a great decision at a key moment, and reflecting back and go, you know what, those FORVIS folks were okay. It just wasn't a good fit for me at that time of life. And then a door opens for another chapter, and that's okay. And we call those valued alumni who walk out the door because hopefully they did it the right way, and we help them make a good decision.
That's tough work to do, isn't it?
It can be complicated, for sure. Yeah. And what makes it tough, Ed, is that it takes time for people to think. And in the work that I do, one of the biggest issues that we have is this perception of compressed time, that there is no time in my day for space to think, to step back, and to really assess things objectively, because they're running from Zoom meeting to appointment to client meeting to home obligation to whatever. I mean, there is no space in their lives, no margin. And so slowing people down to help them recognize this is a big part of, a big opportunity for us as coaches, is to say, whoa, time out here. Let's talk about what you're not allowing yourself to do, to think about, and to be. Are you a human being, or are you human doing? Well, most people are human doings because they don't allow themselves to be.
So as a coach, do you have a coach?
Yes, I do.
And so you work on these things with your coach, I'm assuming.
Yes. Yep.
Good.
And intermittently, go through different stages of life and coaching that make it valuable. I don't have a full-time coach all the time, but I have intermittent coaching.
You have people you can go
relationships.
To.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Well, I asked that because I would think that as a coach, you have to model what you're suggesting to your clients, because it's really important, and but that's where the authenticity comes from, and is modeling, being the person that they're looking to talk to, and that sort of thing. So talk to us about the coaching profession here post COVID, and there's a lot of coaches out there. I know a lot of them. You know a lot of them. Mm-hmm. We know a lot of the same ones, and it had become a really desirable career path for a lot of people who care about people, but also like working in a business environment. So let's talk about the coaching profession as it proceeds from post-COVID and into the future. Tell us what you think. What do you see there?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting field when you think about. It's a relatively new field. 30 years ago, you would have been laughed at to say I'm a professional coach working in an organization. They go, well, what in the world is that? the profession itself is probably less than 35 years old. And so it's evolved a lot. And I think, you have now you've gotten to the point where it's gotten a little bit out of the phase of, well, everybody says they're a coach, they've got a shingle up and they do coaching, to, all right, now you have a governing body, and there's a couple, but the primary one is the International Coaching Federation, in which people work very hard to gain a credential and multiple levels of proficiency that's recognized by that. So I think what I've seen and see changing is going from this more of, hey, I've been in business 20 years, I'll coach you, we'll get together once in a while and we'll talk. Well, in most cases, what's going on in those situations is more mentoring than coaching. People who've been there, done that, and they're going to tell other people how to do it, versus a coach that's coming alongside somebody and really helping to explore what's important to them, partnering with them on this journey of self-exploration and opportunities to determine what's important, establish goals, and then go after them and hold them accountable to a process in which they can accomplish some goals. It's a very, what would I say? I'm going to call it regimented, but the industry itself has gotten a lot more professional.
Right.
And so 10 years ago, if you were not a credentialed coach, no big deal. Today, if you are not a credentialed coach, you will not get into any major organization with your resume to coach. And that eliminates a lot of really good coaches who've been doing it for 20 years because they never thought it was necessary. They were just good at what they did, had a good reputation. And there's still a few that can word of mouth build a business that way, becoming less and less every day. So one of the biggest changes I've seen is this high level of professionalism that's acknowledged and required, at least in the business sector or industry sector. So you got to know, you got to prove that you've been trained or continuing to learn and apply, code of ethics and things that are important to a coaching profession to be able to get the work.
Is there a clear distinction between a business or an executive coach and what is called a life coach?
There are. It's nuanced in the way that people are trained, and you have some crossover for sure. But a life coach is really more focused on someone finding their purpose and figuring out how to eliminate distractions that are going to keep them from achieving their purpose and helping them kind of design a life plan. Mm-hmm. But there's always some of that to a certain extent in the work that we do to be able to help people from an executive coaching standpoint really achieve specific goals and obtain certain levels of professional proficiency that are required for them to grow and have a rewarding career. So there are some nuances there of overlap, but there is definitely a distinction when somebody goes into like a proposal process and say, I'm a lifestyle coach, versus someone who says, I'm an executive coach. And usually an executive coach is going to be in the business world working with leaders, where a lifestyle coach can work with anybody, any stage of their life at any time to accomplish whatever is necessary for their happiness.
I was conducting an interview the other day, and the topic of consulting came up, and the guy that I was interviewing said doesn't use that word, and he says because people would think of him as a subject expert, and he's not a subject expert. He's a process consultant. But now he says now the term we're using is facilitator.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
So I think these are kind of generational things that are taking place. And I think they're healthy. I think they're healthy because it causes everyone to pay attention and to listen and really search what is this person looking for? What do they need? Do they really need me? That's the hard question for any service provider to ask, but do they really need me, or do they need someone else? That's those kinds of questions. And it's quite interesting. So the last thing I want to talk about is the work that we did with a small group of people 10-15 years ago there in Asheville, called Lessons in Leadership. And I think people need to hear about what we did there, because more than anything, it was a local community focused effort by a group of volunteers to support the businesses, local businesses, and their employees through a leadership event. And you're kind of I don't know if you were the actual instigator of it, but you were kind of the ringleader of our group. And would you describe? I mean, this is going out all over the world, so this is something that other people can take this idea and maybe run with it. So that's why I'm asking us to have a little conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
well,
other people do this.
Yeah, and I would love for other people to do it. It was a once in a lifetime unique experience on so many levels. So I guess the short version of the story is you had mentioned Toastmasters earlier. I've been involved in Toastmasters for about 20 years, love the organization, and was looking for a way to spread some of the wealth and the information associated with what people learn in Toastmasters to a larger audience. And just kind of went down several pathways, many doors closed, and I realized that maybe this wasn't the path. And so I got together with a couple of folks, one a good friend of ours, Brian Byro, who's a motivational speaker. And I said, I'd love for us to just take some of the things that we've learned. We kind of take for granted all the great learning, exposure we've had to leadership principles, and share it with the community. What if we put it on an event? And Brian, is just the amazing guy that he is, and just a wonderful human being, goes, well, if you can figure out a time to do it where I'm not traveling, he goes, I will host the first one. And I'm like for free? And he goes, absolutely. He goes, this is my hometown, I'll do it for free. And then I said, well, we need a place for this. It's like, well, that's a great idea. Where are we going to put it? And then I went to another gentleman who just happened to be the general manager of the Grove Park Inn, which is a world-class facility there in Asheville. And he was, I didn't know it, but he was kind of a leadership guy. He just loves the whole concept of developing leaders, and he considers that a big part of what he was doing. He said, well, if you can do it in a specific time frame, he says, I'll provide a facility for you. And I said, well, we don't really have any money to do this. And he goes, don't worry about it. We'll donate it. And I'm like, okay, I got a speaker and I got a place. So now we need a team of people to pull this off.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to a couple other folks. You were shortly in that group that I reached out to, said, hey, how can we concept this? And so we did I'll never forget this. The very first year we did it in January. In the very first year, Brian had a credit card machine. And so we decided we're going to charge $20 as a commitment fee, because we had no idea what to charge and whether or not we should charge anything. But if it's going to be worth all this effort, it's worth $20. And so we said, well, we'll charge $20 and see who shows up. And so we were getting requests for people to come, and Brian was running credit cards from his hotel rooms. He was traveling all over the world, and he was running these registrations to us. And so we were hoping to get like 100 people. We were scared that we were not going to get anywhere close to 100, because it was around the Christmas holidays. And we were just promoting it. Few of us threw out emails, and people said, I'd love to come to a leadership event. And so we got up to about 60 or 70 before Christmas. And then after Christmas, Ed, we started getting 20 to 30 registrations a day. We had to expand the ballroom that would take 100. And we ended up the first year having 620 people show up. And it was one of the most amazing moments I think that any of us could have imagined, because we had all these people from the community, made it affordable for them to come and experience a leadership event, many of which had never, and probably since then maybe have never experienced anything like that. And they networked, they encouraged each other, they talked to each other in such an uplifting manner, and they were inspired by Brian and his very uplifting message. And they came to us, who were kind of the organizers, afterwards, and said, you got to do this again. And we're like, well, this was a one and done. And but we had $11,000 left over, because no one charged us anything everything. The people got on board. They just said, this is such a great thing for the community. We'll donate our video services. We'll donate the food and snacks, and it's like we had literally maybe $500 in expenses for that night. And so I saw the bank account, and we set up a temporary bank account. And I said, there's like $11,000 in there. It's like, what do we do with this? And we kind of just stared at each other and go, well, I don't know. Well, we got to do something with it. So, well, let's maybe do one more. Let's see if we could do one more. So all that's to say is, over a period of 7 years, we did these events. We partnered with nonprofits in the community, which was another kind of fun thing that evolved from this, because they kind of came to support and do some legwork at the shows. We poured $90,000 back into nonprofits and gave 5,000 people over a period of time exposure to some world-class leadership training. We were able to recruit speakers who caught the vision as well. We would maybe pay some of their expenses, but we never paid not one speaker fee in the 7 years that we did it. And here's the other cool thing that happened. This is what excited me too, is we had people like you who were established thought leaders. Meredith Elliott Powell, and I will have our listeners look up that name. She had a dream to be a speaker. She was not a speaker, and she had a dream, and we gave her an opportunity to test her capabilities in that area, not really knowing what she could do, but we just believed she could do something. And she had a great experience. She kept coming back and back. And let me tell you, Meredith Elliott Powell not only travels the world and speaks today, she is the current president of the National Speakers Association. And it started with giving her a chance at Lessons in Leadership about 15 years ago to see if this is something that she wanted to do. How cool a story is that?
It is really great. I saw one of Meredith's very first presentations, and she had a lot to learn, and I know that she excelled very quickly, and it's so happy for her. Here's what I want to add to this, and I want to speak to people who see themselves as leaders in their local communities. This is a way of joining people together in support of your community. There's not a lot of, you may have a minor league baseball team in your community, you may have a university there that has a following. These are all great things for a community, but there's something about having a leadership event where business owners bring their staff to the event. That's what this was about. And to think about the receptionist in a physician's office coming to an event where she's going to hear someone talk to her directly about being a leader in the office is just as sweet a thing as you can imagine, because it gives people a sense that I belong here. My life, my work, my service matters here, and it's really a significant thing. So I think that if let me put it this way, if you feel like your community is struggling and it doesn't have a sense of a sense of unity or a sense of togetherness, then go find 5 people and say, we're going to put an event on, and if you need help, contact John or contact me. We can help you plan this thing, and invite people to come. We can give you the model, that sort of thing. But if you do this, then what you will see is that people want to talk, they want to be together, they want to be recognized as being a member of the community. And if you leave the politics out of it, the politics of the community, then you really have something special that can become a platform for all kinds of other things to go.
Yeah, and I think that was the beauty of that model, is that no one really cared who got credit. No one was trying to make a name for themselves. No one wanted, to be on the stage to get, publicity. It was about none of that, even though we had, prominent members of the community that were involved on and off. It was really about showcasing the everyday person and giving them inspiration, motivation, and a new way to look at themselves through the lens of being a future leader. And that receptionist at the doctor's office is a leader, and convincing them of that in that moment is with a couple thousand people all around them looking and feeling the same way was pretty cool too.
So one of the things you'll find out, folks, is you're going to find out what the needs of your community are. And if you're willing to do it, you can create a second event 6 months later, which is more like a seminar. And you have people come to do an hour seminar, hour presentation, and people can come and you can talk about these things. So it's another way of becoming a catalyst for people to come together to create opportunities for change in your community. So we did that 2 or 3 times, and it was really successful. And so all of these things help to put John in a position and me in a position of being people who really care about local communities. And I'm grateful for that. And I remember sitting there in the lobby of the YMCA there in Biltmore Park, waiting for our daughters to finish swim practice. And you were talking about this, and you invited me to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And that was one of those half dozen moments in my life there in Asheville that I look as seminal in defining who I am now as a person. So thank you.
Oh, well, you were a great part of it, great thought leader and contributor. And we were all brought together in a great moment to, I think, have some impact that was far beyond our dreams. But together, it was a fun journey. It really was.
Well, folks, if any of this interests you, please let us know in the notes, in the comment section, so that if you are interested in maybe becoming a coach, or you're interested in something else like the Lessons in Leadership program, let us know, and we'll be in touch with you. I'll be in touch with you, and maybe John can provide some direction for what you can do. And so, John, thank you for being with us today. It's been a lot of fun. Look forward to seeing you in the flesh one of these days.
Yes.
And
yeah, I hope so.
yeah, and
Been too long.
yeah. So thank you, everybody. Please subscribe, hit the like button, and comment if you will. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time here on the Eddie Network podcast. Bye-bye.